Capitalism has made it this way. Old-fashioned fascism will take it away. These are the famous lyrics to Marilyn Manson's The Beautiful People out of his 1996 album Antichrist Superstar. Here we see an opposition between capitalism, a mode of production that merits, according to Manson, the size of your steeple, and fascism, an ideology that some fear is returning, a kind of return of the repressed for conservative right-wing politics. But is capitalism an ideology? The fact of the matter is that it seems quite an obvious distinction to make, that between what people do in order to live and what people say their life is or ought to be about. What we do in capitalism is basically buy and sell things, commodities that our society values, a society that engages in trade with or without the invisible hand that could keep things reasonably humane. But capitalism is also what people do with their free time, whether they enjoy it or not. Things like traveling, socializing in a certain way that is never unrelated to what each person does for a living. Sure, one can always talk about things like friendship or love or knowledge or poetry in abstract or rather universal terms. But really, are such meanings and the material practices that they refer to really transhistorical, purely about human nature? Common wisdom says that ideology is just what people think and promote as their ideal of what society should be. That is, what social relations and their politics should look like. That's what's commonly understood to be ideological, and the only reason why we find ourselves in our political predicament today. So let's hear Slavoj Žižek and Will Self respectively arguing for and against the ideological condition of capitalism.
One among, at least, the best managers of capitalism are ex-communists where they are still in power.
I always think, though, you conflate two things, and people who are influenced by Marxist philosophy tend to conflate two things when they look at capitalism. Well, capitalism isn't an ideology. It has ideologies associated with it, nor exactly is it a mode of production. But it's a tool.
The tool?
It's a tool. Capitalism is a tool.
What do we mean by this?
It's a way of affecting change at a distance, like any other tool.
Yeah, but nonetheless, I would say it's not a tool in the sense we usually understand a tool. Like now, if I have to big hammer, I will chop your head. I think it's a certain social mechanism.
Think of what Gregory Bateson says. You know, if the axe is the tool, then the man's arm is the tool. And if the man's arm is the tool, then the man standing on the earth is part of the tool, and so is the tree that he's chopping.
But I think nonetheless all this complex can be part of a certain mechanism.
No, but I think the problem for you Marxists is you're always identifying capitalism as if it were an ideology. It's not an ideology, it's just what people do, which is why all these good leftists have their mobile phones with their coltan in their pocket.
Actually, Will Self might just be giving it to us in that this kind of phenomenology of the tool is precisely what capitalism is all about at the level of ideology. And phenomenology is just one of the ways in which capitalist ideology has allowed for the main action at a distance, which is capitalist exploitation. Nothing intrinsically exploitative in this kind of philosophy, but indeed phenomenological discourse is dominant and has served the purpose of displacing the idea of the exploitative nature of what we do for a living. It has displaced the concrete social problematic, that is, and has moved its conflict to the interior of an abstract textual problematic, that is, to what Althusser referred to as, quote-unquote, the imaginary relation of individuals with the real conditions of existence. Hence, the distant action, which is ideological production of the means of production, namely the supposedly free subjects, that is what is being produced, free subjects who need to be produced as such, so they can feel free to exploit or be exploited, and be able to say at the end of the day that That's just what people do.